Welcome to the first of what I hope to be a long-running series of deep dives into the men and women who have shaped history and the world as we know it. My name is Raul, and today we'll be focusing on a person who needs little introduction, but still shall get one anyway. Alexander the Great. Why do I say that? Because few in history have the title, or better yet have earned the title, the Great. This channel combines two of my great loves, anime and history. And there arguably is no better character, yes I say a character, than Alexander himself. He in a lot of ways is one of the most anime-esque protagonists to grace the ancient world. Characters like Alexander build such legends about themselves that history views them as almost larger than life. Now that can be painted positively, but that can also be painted negatively. We've all seen or heard or read about the likes of Caesar, Napoleon, Genghis Khan, and Charlemagne, to name a few. These are characters that are remembered as conquerors in their own right, characters who became legends. All of the aforementioned characters, they all share a unique thing. They were people who built empires through sheer force of ambition, through sheer force of will. They looked at the proverbial binds placed by the world and came to the decision that they do not apply to them. They all pursued glory with such intensity that entire continents bent around their desires. But as their respective legends show, at what point does this stop being ambition? When does this stop being legendary? And when does this become hubris and catastrophe? Larger-than-life figures such as those, when they rise, the world takes note, as they shake the very foundations of the known world. But when they fall, the world falls with them. But history has always asked the same question. As I said before, at what point does ambition stop becoming greatness and start becoming catastrophe? Our ancient myths not only warn us, but they've warned us long before history ever did. People achieving the seemingly impossible, as well as those same people overreaching and their inevitable falls. But what happens when the people who fly close to that proverbial sun are kings, are queens, are emperors? What happens when the ambitions control armies, entire civilizations, the fate of millions? When great conquerors fall, the world falls with them. Tonight, we begin the story of one of history's oldest and most dangerous obsessions, the desire to conquer everything. Human civilization has always celebrated ambition. The desire to achieve greatness, the desire to stand above others, the desire to carve one's name into history itself. In moderation, ambition creates explorers, it gives us inventors, artists, and leaders. But history has repeatedly shown what happens when ambition escapes its restraints. The ancient Greeks, for example, they believed there was virtue in balance. Someone with too little courage would be seen as a coward. Someone with too much courage would be seen as reckless. You could say ambition works in a similar way, because ambition is never satisfied for long. The moment, let's say, a kingdom falls, there's another on the horizon. The moment a rival is defeated, another shall rise. And eventually, the idea of conquest itself becomes addictive. For ordinary people, unchecked ambition might ruin a career, break a family, or ruin a life. But for emperors and conquerors, unchecked ambition can erase whole nations. Few figures honestly embody this better than Julius Caesar. As I said, he's described by ancient writers as standing before a statue of Alexander while in his time serving in Spain. He was still young at this point, barely in his 30s. Now, the story goes, he began to cry, not because of loss or tragedy, or a sense of failure. No, he began to cry because By Alexander's age, Alexander had already conquered most of the known world. Caesar compared his own accomplishments, and saw them as insignificant. Such a moment reveals something almost unsettling about history's greatest conquerors. They aren't simply competing against the ordinary everyman. No, they compete against a sense of time and immortality, against the greatest names to come before them. Men like Caesar, they didn't simply want to succeed, they wanted it to be eternally remembered. And once ambition reaches that level, ordinary morality begins to waver, begins to disappear, begins to be questioned, because no one becomes the great peacefully. One other such character, as I said earlier, Napoleon Bonaparte himself. He once described his ambition as a fire of sorts, a being, a force, an entity that just consumes everything in and around it. And as we've seen, history has proved him right. The desire to be distinct, to stand out, can inspire greatness, but it can also transform entire civilizations into pure machines of war. The most dangerous leaders in history, they aren't often driven by hatred. They're driven by a sense of destiny, a belief that them alone are meant to reshape the world. That belief can justify and twist just about anything. Mass death, war, the destruction of cultures, the destruction of nations, all can be twisted in a service of a dream larger than any single human life. And then, after all is said and done, there's Alexander. More than 2,000 years later, not only does his name survive, it survives with the title The Great. Empires vanished, civilizations fell, languages came and disappeared, but Alexander still remains. His story became legendary because he achieved something that few people have and ever will. He conquered so much of the known world in such a quick manner that history almost struggled to understand, to process how such a thing was possible. To some, he was looked at as a visionary, a philosopher, a king, a unifier of civilizations. To others, a butcher, a destroyer, a wildfire through history, burning all it sees fit. And perhaps that contradiction is exactly why people remain so fascinated by him. Because figures like Alexander, they become mirrors. Every subsequent generation sees in him whatever it fears or it even admires. Now, to understand Alexander, we first need to understand the world that created him. Macedonia was not Athens. It wasn't a refined society full of philosophers debating politics beneath shining marble columns. No, it was rough, it was unstable, it was violent. It was a kingdom surrounded by enemies. Its royal court was infamous for betrayals, political marriages, civil wars, murders, assassinations. Kings died violently, princes disappeared, power shifted at a whim. Survival itself became a form of natural selection. And from this brutal environment emerged Philip II, Alexander's father. One of history's, dare I say, most underrated rulers. Because Alexander, he may have conquered the world, but it was Philip that built the machinery that made it possible for Alexander to be. Before Philip, Macedonia was weak, it was broken, it was unstable, but he transformed it. He reorganized the army, he centralized authority, he expanded its wealth, and most importantly, he created one of the deadliest military systems the ancient world had ever seen. You've probably all heard of the Macedonian phalanx. This is where it was born. Rows of disciplined soldiers armed with enormous spears, capable of overthrowing traditional armies. Philip forged Macedonia into a weapon, and then history handed that weapon to Alexander. One of the differences between Greece and Macedonia, the Greek city-states themselves, they valued philosophy, they valued politics, they valued civic participation. Macedonia valued survival. Greek citizens were often part-time soldiers, farmers who, let's say, picked up shields during war before returning home. Macedonian society, on the other hand, revolved around warfare. Its nobility lived alongside violence. Its rulers constantly fought their rivals. The people grew up in a harsher world. This is an important difference, because conquest in the ancient world, it was a deeply personal matter. There were no drones, no missiles launched from thousands of kilometers away. To conquer another kingdom, you had to look another being, another human, dead in the eye and kill them yourself. The Macedonians became frighteningly good at this. Alexander inherited more than a kingdom. He inherited the momentum that Philip had built up. A powerful army, a centralized state, a culture shaped and bred by warfare, and perhaps most importantly, a belief that greatness belonged to him. From his childhood, Alexander was raised on stories of heroes, Heracles, Achilles, the legends of Homer. He did not see himself as an ordinary ruler. No, he saw himself as someone destined to surpass myth itself. And that belief would carry him further than any conqueror in human history. History often remembers contexts and conquests through maps, colored territories, battle lines, expanding, shrinking empires. But behind every empire are the human beings that make it possible. Their dreams, their ambitions, their fears, their ego. The story of Alexander is not simply the story of military genius. It's the story of what happens when one human, one person, one being refuses to accept their limits. And throughout history, civilizations have repeatedly paid the price for people who have believed destiny belonged to them. The line between greatness and catastrophe is often far thinner than history would like to admit. And sometimes, the people who change the world the most are the ones who burn it brightest. Next time, we'll dive into Philip's military changes and the creation of the war machine that Alexander would eventually come to inherit. Thanks for listening, and be sure to like and subscribe. This has been a Slice of History.